Stocks are not safer in the long run. I can't believe how many people fall for this idea that, oh my goodness, the longer you hold stocks, the less risky they are. It's just the evidence of that is so silly, man. So silly. And I'm going to prove it in two different ways here. We're going to prove it in just basic performance numbers historically here in this video, and then we're going to do some academic stuff as well. It's mind-bogglingly how people fall for this. Stocks are less risky in the long run. Oh, it just drives you up the wall. I mean, you could be 100% stock investor. I'm not saying don't. I don't care. But the idea that you're saying my stocks 20 years from now are less risky than they are today is just it's silly, man. Silly. So let me show you what I'm talking about. All right, so let's go to Portfolio Visualizer first and foremost, and we're just going to bust out the old VFINX, the Vanguard S&P 500 Index, and only Portfolio Visualizer only goes back to 1985. We'll use Daniel Kuhlberg's web spreadsheet here in just a second. So let's see when stocks are less risky in the long run. So 1985 to 2023, that's a long-term investment horizon now, isn't it? Yes, it is, Josh. Yes, it is. So our compounded annual growth rate over that time was 11%. 11% from 1985 to 2023. Did you think it'd be 11% in 1985 when the PEs were, in 1982, the PE ratios on the S&P 500 were about 8? No, you did not think you'd have a compounded annual growth rate of 11% in 1985. You did not. Now, you just happen to be at the beginning of a boom market like we've never seen from 82 to 1999. So your 100,000 or 10,000 grew to 127,000 come July 2000. In fact, it grew right, I thought so, 135. August 2000, the 10,000 you had grew to 135,000 bucks. All right, so you're like, look, stocks in the long run, as Jeremy Siegel's third edition was around in 1999, if memory serves. This is when in May or March was when what's his name Schiller published Irrational Exuberance. All right, so now, oh wait, we started with 135, and we didn't get back to 135 until right there, 2010. So we peaked out in August 2000 at 135, and it took till December of 2010 before we got to 135 again. With stocks less risky at that point, we had 10 years we made no money. On top of that, we go over here too. So now we're sitting here like, oh, but look all that money we made since. Yeah, all right, we made all that money since, didn't we? But those 10 years we didn't make anything. And we're not taking money out either. We're just letting it be. So when is stocks less aggressive? When did they get less risky? The risk is always there. It's always there, and here. All right, now we had a big run from 1982 to 1999, huge run. So now if we go to, so when it was stopped, because we held this from, what's that, 35 years basically, 38 years, we can say, look, Josh, well, we've averaged 11% a year. All right, so the question is now, which I'm going to show you something here. We're going to go to this article that these academics had written, Pastor and Steinbaugh. Are stocks really less volatile in the long run? I put this on my community page on YouTube. By the way, if you like what I do in these videos, buy me a cup of coffee. It's in the doobie-doo. A cup of coffee, dude. Your old buddy Josh, $5, cup of coffee, decaf. You throw me a bone, man. Tip the guy who makes your life better. For heaven's sake, I'm not too proud to beg. So what Pastor and Steinbaugh says, uncertainty about future expected returns. Did you really have a future expected return of 11% in 1985? No, you did not. So uncertainty about future expected returns is often neglected in discussions of how return predictability affects long horizon return variance. Variance is just the volatility around the mean. All right, and that's where we square root that to get standard deviation, by the way. All right, so now are you expecting a 11% compounded annual growth rate right here? I would hope you're not. I would hope you're not. All right, so if we are actually going to engage in expected rates of return, that changes the variance in terms of stocks being risky or less risky for the short term, or less risky in the long term as opposed to short term. Such discussions typically highlight mean reversion, but mean reversion and predictability more generally require variance in the conditional expected return. That variance makes the future values of expected return uncertain, especially in the more distant future periods, thereby contributing to overall uncertainty about future returns. Because we don't know about the future returns, we have no clue. It's easy to look in hindsight and say stocks are less risky in the long run looking back. But because we don't know what the future returns are going to be, it makes it harder for a typical investor to say stocks are less risky in the long term, because you don't know that, because you don't know what the future holds. We're always in the short term with stocks, always. The long term never comes. Someday never comes. I'm here to tell you now, each and every mother's son, you better learn it fast, you better learn it young, because someday never comes. The long term never comes. We're always short-term investors, always. The risk is always in the short term. The short term is always and everywhere right here. Boink, boink, and boink. That doesn't go away. Just because you made more money from right here is where you were. You didn't care about what you were there. You're sitting there thinking, hey, man, I'm at 135. That's great. You're not sitting there saying, well, oh, my goodness, I'm at 77 now. That's okay because I was at 10, 23 years ago, I guess 18 years ago. You weren't saying that. Right here, you're at 135. Now you're down to 77. You weren't sitting there saying, I'm still up 77 times from where I was 18 years ago. You're saying I'm down freaking 40%, 45%. And then you get back up. Oh, now you're down again. You're not sitting there thinking, oh, man, okay, I'm back. No, now you're down again. No one is sitting there saying, well, but Josh, I start with $10,000, so stocks the long run. The long run is always less risky. No, it's not. Because this is what you contended with. You weren't sitting here thinking, it's okay if I lose half my portfolio because I'm way above where I started. The risk is still here. The risk is still there. The risk is there. Even though you've made money over time, the risk is still there. It doesn't go away. And the risk is immediate. It's an immediate risk to your portfolio, to your livelihood right there. And this is just 1985. Let's go to Dan Colbert's bucket strategy. We're going to 1926, S&P 500. So here we're at $100,000. It grew to 157. No, I'm sorry, to 225 by 1929. And then it fell all the way to 82. When did it hit back to 225? Right there, 1937. So it went from 225 in 1929 to 245 in 1937. It took 8 years just to get back to where you were. That's without pulling any money out. All right, so now we're at 245 in 1937. We get destroyed in 1937. And now we're not back to 245 until right here. Basically the end of World War I, World War II. It took us another 8 years. Yeah, 8 years. Again, you don't care at 245 that you're well above where you were a few years ago when you get knocked down to 166. You're not sitting there saying, man, I can afford to go down 33% in 1937. The risk is still there. This idea that stocks are less risky in the long run is insane. Just because you've made more money, the risk is still an immediate hit to your total portfolio. Yeah, it's crazy. All right, let's keep going here. I just had to point out too, any analysis that takes the post-World War II relative to basically 1968 will always make stocks look great. So here we go from 1946. I'm just looking at 419. Look at where we are until 1968. It's crazy. $6 million. Isn't that nuts? That's the stocks so smoked bonds over that 20-year time frame that if any time frame that uses that 20-year time frame in an analysis of stocks versus bonds rate of returns, stocks will always beat it. The amount of money one made in stocks relative to bonds is insane. It's insane. It's insane at that 20-year time frame. All right. So now we're sitting at 1968, 69. We're sitting at $6 million. It doesn't matter the amount I'm just showing you. Now you're down to we're down now here to so for 1969 we're down to 6.3. I got no big deal because I came back hard. Now we're in 1973. We got $8 million. By the time 1975 rolled around, we're down to 5. We lost $3.5 million. It doesn't even matter the amount. I'm just saying we lost 3.3 million divided by 8.6. We're down 38%. You're not sitting there saying, I can handle it because I started back in 1926 with $100,000. You're not saying that. All right. So now by the time 1982 rolls around, we're at $5 million. And this is the beginning of another second phase of huge stock market returns. 1946 to 1968, 1982 to 1999. All right. I'm just telling you, man. If you miss those, you're screwed. It's all there is to it. All right. So now you're sitting there thinking, oh man, the stock market, no risk. Watch what happens here. So now we're going to go to 2000. We're at 292 million. Now we're down to 181. We went from 292 to 181 minus 181 divided by 292. We're down another 38%. You think the risk is gone there? The stocks are less risky for the long run. Remember, we started in 1926. Yeah, but Josh, you only start with $100,000. The risk is still there. The risk is still there because the risk is always short term. The long term never comes. Now we're sitting at 332. We go down to 208. We lost. Look at that, dude. We lost. This doesn't include what happened from the October 2007 to March 9th of 2009, when we're down 57%. It's crazy. So now we're at 332. We lost, what's that? 332 minus 208 divided by 332. We're down another 37%. The risk is always there. All right, so if that doesn't convince you, check this out. We're going to go back to this right here. Hold on just a second. The long-run volatility of stocks is of substantial interest to investors. Evidence of lower long-horizon variance, the difference between the mean is the average, in support of higher equity allocations for long-run investors. Evidence of lower long-term variance, volatility, evidence for lower long-term volatility is cited in support of higher equity allocations. Our empirical results, empirical means observable, our observable results indicate that stocks should be viewed by investors as more volatile at long horizons. Once uncertainty about the parameters and conditional expected return is recognized. All right, so once you recognize the uncertainty about the future rates of return, we don't expect, I would hope you're not expecting 11%. What are you expecting? 5, 4, 8? The uncertainty about the future rates of return being recognized, we don't know what the future is. We look in hindsight, the past was 11% compounded annual growth rate. We have no clue what the future is. It could be anything. So once uncertainty about that is recognized, the same investors that thought stocks are less risky for the long run find that typical glide path, which is heavy exposure to stocks, they find the typical glide path significantly less appealing. Investors with sufficiently long horizons instead prefer glide paths whose initial as well as final stock allocations are substantially lower than those of shorter horizons. Those of investors with shorter horizons. That's what I said. Once uncertainty comes into play, investors have less risk tolerance, not more. Not to recognize that is not to understand human behavior. They do not want to be shackled with this and this, even though they made money previously. They want to keep the money. The risk doesn't go away. Now let's throw something else in here too. I want to throw, because we're not even close to being done here. We're going to throw in JP, what was it? Hold on a second, I forgot. We're throwing the Japan iShares for Japan. That only goes back to, what does this go back to? Let's go back to that. Oh, I got to put it. It does. I think it goes back to 2002. The iShares. I'm not sure what the Japan mutual fund is. That's okay. So in 2002, we started with $10,000 in the Japan iShares, and that's in the red. It went up to $18,000 in 2007. Now it's back to 10,000. Look at that. So we went to 10, went to 10. So again, same like with us. We basically that whole decade we level off. Oh, but we could handle it. No, you could. Not if you're pulling money out of this. And where's Japan today? It's at 24,000. So 20 years later, we've basically doubled our money just basically over 20 years. What's our compounded annual growth rate? About 4.26. That's assuming we had Japan at $10,000 in 2002. So let's throw Japan in the mix here into Dan Kuhlberg's thing. All right, that's pretty cool. Over here. And we're going to use the Nikkei in bucket 2. And we're going to go to Japan. Nikkei right there. And hopefully it will give us from we're going to say from 1990. All right, so check this out. Actually, let's go, I'll tell you what, we'll go from 1960 so you guys can see. All right, so look at this. We're going to start in there with we'll say 10,000 schmackaroonies. We'll start in the S&P 500 with the same 10,000 schmackaroonies. Yeah, so watch what happens here in Japan. Our $10,000 in Nikkei in 1950 grew to, in 1990, it grew to $3.5 million, amigos, 3.5. $10,000 in the S&P 500 over the same time grew to 1.1 million. Where do you think more investors were enamored by, the U.S. or Japan? Of course, they were more enamored by the U.S. So by the time 2002 rolled around, our $10,000 declined to $959,000. $959,000. So we're going to say we took, we're going to come over here and we're going to say $959,000. And we're going to hit there. We're going to hit boink. All right, so 959. What did we end up as? We ended up in Japan at 2.34 million, where we started in 1990 at 3.5 million. I mean, dude, you can see it right here, right there. That's in 2021. This is in 2023. I mean, you're still underwater from where you were in 1990 in Japan. I mean, how do you square that circle? You can't. You can't square the circle and say, well, the stocks in the long run are less volatile, when the facts are in Japan, this is a freaking going back to 1950. You weren't sitting there freaking, I mean, look at these. You weren't sitting here at 132. So it's okay I fell to 116. It's okay I fell to 180. It's okay I fell from 473 to 349. You weren't sitting there. And then come 1990, the ship just gets destroyed. So now what if we take $5,000? What, yeah, we can do $50,000 a year. Let's do $50,000 a year as cash flows, withdraw a fixed amount. And we're not going to, well, might as well adjust for inflation, just for fun. And that's a little bit less, a little bit more than 5%, not much more. Let's see where we stand now. Because remember, the long term, stocks always for the long term. And now with Japan, we started with 949, we're down to 347. Now we're 20 years in. We're probably going to be okay. I don't know. It's going to be pretty doggone close, because how much we're taking out now, does it say how much we're pulling out now? I can't remember. It's 5% a year, so I'm not sure. So here, but the S&P 500 in 2002, we took 5,000 a year, 50,000 a year out, adjusted for inflation. We're right back where we started in 2002. Again, I'll take that, but it doesn't mean stocks are less risky. Look at that, dude. Look at this right here. That's less risky? No, it's not less risky. Our compounded annual growth rate for the S&P 500 over the last 20 years is negative when you're pulling money out. We started with 959. We ended with 937. And that's to include this massive run we've had since 2009. Huge. Japan, on the other hand, which, remember, we broke even over the last 20 years, but when you start factoring pulling money out, your compounded annual growth rate is negative 4% a year, 4.6. Stocks aren't less risky in the long run. We got to nip that in the bud right now. That's all there is to it. It's easy to say if you're an investor that's putting money in, it's less risky for the long run. Whole different ball game once you're about ready to retire, my friends. Don't get suckered by that. Again, if you want to keep investing your money in stocks and just go balls out, I got no qualm with that. Not as you're investing, not as retirement looms. The numbers don't jibe with your idea that stocks are long run. It's just not there. Love your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to my email list. It's down below. And don't forget my new book. Buy it or else. We'll see you.